So you've chosen your system, you've got your pre-made scenario, or maybe you've made your own, you've gathered up your friends and snacks, and now it's time to run your first session. Stick around to learn my best tips on running this first nerve-wracking, messy, and awkward session. And for more GMing tips to come in the future, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification. Let me start by saying I've been there. I was very nervous for my first session, and I remember my voice shaking when I started to describe the setting. My roleplay skills and improv skills were very minimal, and I just didn't know what to expect. So these tips are something that I've learned through experience, and hopefully they can help you get over that hurdle of running your first session. So first, I want to dive into the proper mindset to keep in mind when running your first session. The first thing to keep in mind is that being nervous or having a little bit of anxiety is perfectly normal. There are people around the table looking to you to provide a nice experience and something that's fun and engaging. That can feel like a lot of pressure. But with practice, you'll get through it, and everyone will end up having a great time. It's important to keep in mind that everything is not going to go exactly as you planned. So in most cases, there's going to be 3 to 6 other brains sitting around the table, and they all have imaginations and ways of thinking that you might not. So chances are they're not going to go exactly the path that you think they will. And that is perfectly okay. Because that kind of leads into my next point, which is this is a collaborative experience. So it's not just on you to make sure that everyone's having fun and everyone is going and experiencing a story. It's also on the players to work together to come up with different ideas and ways to tackle problems or investigate, to come up with a story that is fun for everyone. So all that to say, it's not on you to necessarily control the story or make sure that they go down a specific path. Now, of course, this might lead to some challenges for you as a game master because you might not feel totally comfortable with improving or letting the players go wherever they want to. But try your best to go with it and you'll become better at improving the more you practice. And the last thing to keep in mind when running your first session is that you're not going to remember every single rule. Now, me personally, I think it's perfectly okay for game masters to look up rules during the first or second session. Normally, I've experienced that the group is all learning together and that it's okay to pause the game for a little bit and look up this information. Now, I will caution you to not spend too much time looking at the rules, so if it's not something that you can find pretty quickly, then I would advise you to just make a ruling on it and look it up later, and if you have to correct, then that's fine. You'll play it differently moving forward. Alright, so I guess the smart thing for me to do here would be to jump behind this box. I don't exactly remember how that affects combat, though. I'm not 100% sure on that. Let me look it up really quick. I found it. So basically, it's just a penalty die for the next person that's going to attack you with a firearm. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what makes you the most nervous to run your first session. Or if you've already GM'd before, what made you the most nervous? Now let's tackle sitting down at the table and actually getting into playing the session. At the very beginning, your players are going to need some sort of hook to all end up in the same location. Now, some pre-made scenarios might make it really easy, or systems in which you're all a part of an agency, or something that you all are already in the same place. But if not, there might be situations where there's a mutual friend and the friend needs help with an investigation or problem. You just need something to make sure that they are all starting in the same place. From there, your players should all introduce the characters that they're playing. So this is a great opportunity to try role-playing and give them an opportunity to introduce themselves and start getting into playing their character. However, if you have a group that is new to role-playing games, there's a chance that they're not very comfortable with role-play. In that case, it's not a problem. I would just recommend going around the table and asking each person to introduce the name of their character, describe them a little bit, just so they get used to talking to the group and loosening up a little bit. You've been given a letter to meet Rex Rogers at a bar named the Crawling Tiger down on 4th Street. When you arrive, there's 3 other people looking for him. Go ahead and introduce yourselves. I guess Gwen says, I say... Yeah, I say hello. My name is Gwen, and I have red hair. Yep. And how are you? The next essential piece to have at the beginning of a session is to make sure that your players have non-player characters or NPCs to talk to and ask questions to. So your players are not going to start the campaign or session with all of the information they need to go down the right path. So that's on you to create an NPC that is able to answer those questions and kind of send them on their way. My tips for this NPC is to make it someone that is easy for you to roleplay. So if that means it's someone that's really close to your personality, then that's perfectly okay. It's just someone that you feel like you can comfortably start off with and be able to give the players information and send them down the right path. It's also helpful to provide PCs with motivation to investigate or complete this quest, whatever they're going to be working on in this scenario, just because it makes it easier for them to roleplay. So if it's money, that's fine. But if it's something more deep, like story-wise, connections and relationships, then you'll want to spell that out in the beginning, just so it gives something for the players to grab onto. Good news, the farmer has decided to give you all 50 gold if you complete the task for him. Well, actually, my character is anti-consumerism and doesn't believe in gold, so I don't really feel like doing it. Did you just say you don't believe in gold? Oh, okay, whatever. I mean, I guess he's a farmer, so he offers you to bake you a freshly handmade pie? The last thing to know on the start of the session is you'll notice that we didn't start with a rundown of all the rules. Most of the time when players come to the table, they're ready to go, they're excited for the game, and they want to get into it. So I really recommend just diving right in and starting the session as opposed to going through all the rules. I prefer to teach these rules through action and learn along the way. And ideally, your players have already read through the rules just so everyone has a basic understanding of the system that you're playing. Okay, so your players are all in the same place, they know each other, they have the beginning information, and they're ready to go on their way. There are a couple of things to keep in mind as your players go through the scenario. The first major point is I like to have a nice balance of investigation and combat so that it can mix up the gameplay and keep everyone engaged. This is particularly important if you don't know exactly how your group likes to play, if they're new to role-playing, or if you just don't know your players as well. Some people might love investigation and get bored during combat, or vice versa. So it's important that during your first session you try out both so you can read everyone and see what the players like the most. During this time, you'll also want to look out for body language clues. You'll be able to pretty quickly figure out if they're enjoying the pacing of the game, if it's too fast and confusing, or if it's too slow and they're getting bored. Look out for some of these common body language tips like stacking the dice, pulling out the cell phone, or maybe just a look of confusion on their face. There's a lot of different clues that you can look out for, and you can learn for the next session on how they like to have their game paced out. Another great thing to keep in mind as your session goes on is to focus on your role as a game master. At the end of the day, it's really just describing things, giving information, and asking your players what do they want to do. So if there's an awkward pause or no one really knows what to do, just make sure you're describing the setting, your players have the appropriate information, and if they don't, maybe popping in an NPC to mix things up and make sure that they're on the right path, and to continue to ask them what they want to do next. Okay, so you've played for a few hours and you get to a good stopping point. Maybe it's the end of the scenario, or maybe you're only partway through, but everyone seems like they've had a great time and it's time to wrap everything up. I just have 2 tips for the end of your session. The first is to ask for feedback. This is particularly helpful if you ask open-ended questions because it gives the players opportunity to actually give you details and describe a little bit of either things they enjoyed or things they would like to see more of in the future, just to give you a little hint of how they enjoyed the session. It also opens the door for feedback in the future, so players know that you're comfortable receiving feedback and want to make this game session as enjoyable for everyone as possible. So that's a really great dynamic to have. And my last tip is to make sure you schedule your next session while everyone is in the same room. That way you have it on the calendar and everyone can look forward to the next session. So congratulations on making it this far. Jamming can be something really intimidating, but with practice, it's something that you'll get better at as you go. And in my experience, the more you start to enjoy it. So hopefully these tips were helpful, and thank you for watching. Feel free to look at the other new GM or keeper guide videos that I've made, or any of the recent videos that I've posted on role-playing games. Thanks!